Welcome, everyone, to the Firing the Man podcast. On today's episode, we are joined by Chloë Thomas. Chloë is a best-selling author, international speaker, and host of the award-winning e-commerce MasterPlan Podcast and the brand new Keep Optimising Podcast. Chloë is one of the top 30 e-commerce influencers in 2021, and her podcasts are regularly included in lists of top e-commerce and marketing podcasts around the world. Chloë has been in the e-commerce world since 2003. She's worked on the client side, the agency side, as well as the advisor side. Working with a variety of retailers in high street omnichannel operations to fresh online-only startups, covering international launches, subscriptions, B2B, and even dabbling in marketplaces. Chloë's specialty is solving e-commerce marketing problems from tiny tactics to huge strategies. Welcome to the show, Chloë.
Thanks, David. It is lovely to be here. Any chance to talk e-commerce and I'm there.
Absolutely. Well, we're really looking forward to it. So first things first, tell us a little bit about yourself and your path in the e-commerce world.
Sure. So as you said, I've been in the e-commerce world for a scarily long time now, since 2003, and I got into it accidentally. So I was working for one of the UK's largest banks in their retail marketing team, so Barclays Bank, and I was desperate to leave. I was never built to work in a big company. So I applied to every marketing job going. And the first place to offer me a job was a UK high street retailer who had a catalogue division and a website back then. It lived in a box in the corner of the office. And at Christmas, none of us were allowed to use the internet because otherwise customers couldn't check out properly back in the day. So I ended up in by accident and became totally obsessed with the metrics, the numbers, the marketing methods you could use to drive sales. That business went under 2 years, 2 Christmases in. Wasn't my fault, I promise. And then I got offered various jobs and took one at a group of mail order businesses who had never done e-commerce. So they had mailing lists of, hundreds of thousands of people they'd send a catalogue to, and a website that might have the right product on it 2 weeks after the catalogue mailed, if you were lucky. And ring size L would be listed separately to ring size M, just truly hideous scenarios. Not their fault at all, because they were all used to running catalogs. So I got to kind of be the kid in the candy shop across about 8 different brands, bringing new sites, new email marketing programs, the first email marketing programs, Google ads, Facebook ads didn't exist, but hey, I'd have tried it if it did. It was a brilliant time. And me and the guy who ran that business turned what I did into a marketing agency. So I got into e-commerce accidentally, and I got into running a marketing agency accidentally. And it took me about 5 years to realize I shouldn't be running a marketing agency. So I started eCommerce MasterPlan as my escape route. And after about 5 years, finally managed to get rid of the agency. And now I get to just do eCommerce MasterPlan. So it's been an interesting journey. I've worked with, as you said in the intro, a huge range of different businesses across my history. And the key thing across all of them is that it's all about helping business owners find their path to growth by helping them solve their marketing problems. So yeah, that's the quick rundown of what I've been up to for the last 18 years.
That's awesome. So Chloë, the intro was you have a lot of experience. You've been in this space for a really long time. Very impressive. So before we dig into all of this at a higher level, can you share with the audience maybe some kind of what we've seen in the last, say, 12 months in e-commerce, and then what do you think the next 12 months is going to look like with everything going on in the world?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question at any time. And at the moment, it's just, although I think if you'd asked me it 6 months ago, it would have been harder to answer. I mean, the last 12 months have been phenomenal. The pandemic kind of created this kind of perfect storm of opportunity to grow e-commerce. Everyone was made to be at home. So everyone started ordering online. And if you weren't made to be at home, you probably didn't want to go out anyway. So you were ordering online. I mean, the stats in the uplift in online take-up is just crazy. And then a lot of people, because they were working from home, had all this spare time. And I think a lot of people reevaluated their lives. So I haven't seen the stats on Amazon, but I'm guessing there's a lot more Amazon sellers in the last 18 months. Certainly, we've got a lot more Shopify brands, a lot more people selling on all the platforms that I spend my time looking at. So it's been, we've had this huge increase in demand online. We've had this huge increase in competition online. And then we've had the cookie thing. In the UK, we've had the Brexit thing. And it's just been a really crazy time. And, you can look at the stats of all of this, but I think the most interesting things that have come out the last 12 months, 18 months for me are the softer trends, so the consumer's desire for connection that we knew was coming before, and the desire for that emotional connection with brands, that's really skyrocketed in the last 18 months because we were denied so many forms of human connection. And then this, still not quite worked out what to call it, but it's partly Black Lives Matter, it's partly sustainability, it's partly the emotional piece comes into this as well, but it's that kind of desire to be connected with a cause, and that increasingly consumers are kind of checking a business to see, is it vegan? Is it ethical? Do they use non-plastic packaging? Who's the founder? And all these kind of like tick boxes of whether people want to buy from you or not. So those are kind of like, that's my last 12 months bit. Looking forward to the next 12 months, I think one of the really interesting things, I think actually the most interesting thing going on in e-commerce at the moment is the growth of the Amazon aggregators. All these businesses who have crazy funding, who are just buying up brands, I find fascinating because you can see the opportunity from the ops streamlining, but on the flip side, you're at the hands of Amazon. So it could all go, it probably won't, but it could all go. And I find that really fascinating. And that I think is going to create even more competition in the own site space, because people are going to be, one of the reasons they're buying up these brands is to create better brand connection and then to leverage and grow and scale and all the rest of it. So I think we're going to see increased competition. I think we're going to see consumers continuing to buy a lot online. I think the next 3 months, so Q4, here in the UK, and I believe you're having similar problems in the US, stock is going to be a huge issue. So I think this Black Friday is going to be unlike any Black Friday before, because we've got higher competition. We've got the Facebook ads changes that have come in, the cookie apocalypse, if you will. And then we've got, it's changing things so much. And then you've got, are people actually going to have any stock to sell? And, Black Friday is about trading margin for customers. If you've not got any stock, why would you trade margin for customers? Because if you're going to sell through your stock anyway. So I am fascinated to see what happens over the next 3 months. The roller coaster is going to continue, basically.
Very nice. Very nice. There's a lot there that I want to unpack. And the first thing that I'd like to dive into is that connection with the customer. I think you made a really unique point about how people are wanting to know about how sustainable the brand is and who owns it. And I would say, a good bit of our listeners are Amazon sellers. And that's something that I think we often struggle with, is that people will think that they're actually buying from Amazon and not a third-party seller. However, I've seen a lot of brands do a really good job showing kind of behind the curtain. What is this company all about? And so curious if you've seen any like unique and creative ways that people are connecting with their customers outside of like an about me page, right? Or about us on the website, right?
Yeah, the About Us page is my number one bugbear in e-commerce, is the number of e-commerce brands you go onto and it just has the address. It's like, please, people. I regularly rant about that, but I'll try not to right now. I mean, in terms of doing it creatively, one of the most interesting things I'm seeing at the moment is brands doing live streams. So, I mean, they're called experiential marketing or what's the one I heard today? It was something like shop gamification or shopability, but literally doing a live video stream to ask questions, to talk about the product, to demo product live to customers. So basically a webinar, but for e-commerce. And I think that is one of the most interesting ways people are doing to, like, in that snapshot of time, to reveal the owner. But it does, where it's being the most powerful is doing it in the fundamental places. So the About Us page, so you've actually got the information there so they can actually find it if they want to. And then the email welcome campaign. So when someone signs up to your emails, they get a series of emails explaining who you are, to turn them into your perfect buyer. And then one of the interesting places which has really come to the forefront in the last 18 months, because people have had so many more buyers and delivery issues, is the post-purchase email sequence. So quite old school methods, but ways in which people have gone, look, here's the people in our warehouse who are packing your order. They're massively overworked. We're having to keep them 2 meters apart. Please be nice. It's going to take a bit longer than normal, you know? So you're kind of going, have some sympathy with us. You know, our couriers are working really hard. We're trying. Our customer service team are having to work from home. Please be nice to us. But that's a way of showing, you know, the thing behind the business, who we are. And, you know, as things become more normal again, and you know, the processes don't require quite that please be nice to us angle, we can change it into, here's the product, this is what's coming, this is how to use it. So we can build that excitement with the product and why we've created it and all the rest of it. So you, from the point at which the product is ordered until it arrives, you can kind of like start the product hands-on process before you've got it hands-on, and then you're getting customers more excited, which turns them into repeat customers. So all of those elements, although they're not, I mean, the live stream is pretty new and exciting, but the rest of them are pretty straightforward and always been available to us. But that is how you start creating a strong relationship with them.
Nice. Yeah, that's dynamite right there. One follow-up question, Chloe, on an About Us page. So I would say our direct-to-consumer website, we're probably at like a level 2 About Us page. We have more than an address. We have some pictures of the team and a little bit of a story. Can you describe like a level 3 About Us page? What's the cream of the crop?
I love the fact you talk about it as kind of a level 2, because one of the things I often say when I'm ranting is that it doesn't have to be perfect on day one. It's like everything we're doing, getting something out there that's better than the address, even if it's just one paragraph, is better than just the address. So stage 2, nice work, I say, first of all. Taking it up to stage 3 might be something, because it depends on your brand, what's relevant. And for some brands, what you've done is enough. You know, if I'm buying a biro, not as interested in it as if I'm, she says, trying to find something on the desk, I don't know, buying this rather cool Japanese stapler without staples thing, maybe, you know, sexy stationery versus dull stationery, very different approaches to About Us pages. But I guess for me, a level 3 has got definitely pictures of the founders, the story of why they created the brand, why it was important, the problems they're trying to solve, which has probably got an element of video, because it doesn't have to be high production, but hey, I'm X, this is why I created the brand, this is what we do, which you're probably updating every couple of years. And you don't need to update it every week, but probably not every year, but certainly every couple of years. And then, you know, who's our team, how we work, the values that are important to us. And sometimes what can also be useful is, because there's a brand I talk about, someone who's called Tailor Made Polish, an American business who do make your own nail varnish color. And their sales pitch is all about how cool is it to make your own nail varnish, right? And the fun you can have doing it and the different ways in which you can do it. But if you go as far as their About Us page, you'll see that it's vegan. It's not got acetone in it. It's good for your nails. And they've ticked all, and you know, they try not to use plastic in the packaging and all this sort of stuff. And they put those tick boxes there. So if you're someone who's got pulled in by their sales pitch, but you're going, oh, but is it vegan? You can go across the About Us page and you get that kind of, I mean, it's literally a series of bullet points fairly high up the page. So level 3 depends on what you need to put there for your customers, but that's the elements I put into it.
Yeah, I like that. Thanks so much. And if you're not watching on YouTube, I was taking a lot of notes during that. So our level 3 About Us page is going to come alive here soon. So awesome. David, over to you.
Yeah. So as we're on the topic of websites, and I know that your sweet spot is Shopify, which I'm really excited to dig into. There's a movie that I often quote called Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner. And there's a line in there, if you build it, they will come. And I have found in my experience that when you build a website, customers don't necessarily always come. And so it takes a series of, you know, content, paid traffic, email marketing, and So I would say I've got one direct-to-consumer website that I would say is maybe at like level 1 or 2. So let's talk about, and I think probably a lot of our listeners are there. They have a Shopify website. They may get 1 or 2 sales every month, but they're just not quite sure what to do with it. So what advice would you give to that entry-level Shopify brand owner and how they can take it to the next level?
Yeah, I think it's one of the most tricky things people have. And it used to be back when I started, it was people who had a physical retail store and they built their website and they were like, why is no one buying from it? It's like, well, because your rent of a physical store is partly marketing spend because there's people walking past it. And then you've got the same thing I find nowadays with a lot of people who sell on eBay or sell on Amazon or sell on Etsy. They create that physical store for the first time. And whilst you're used to doing Amazon pay-per-click, Amazon SEO, and all these tactics to grow your sales on there, it's a totally different ball game when you come to your own site because it's tumbleweed until you start driving some traffic. So for me, the very first things to do it is very much a stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and you want to get everything to stage 1 and then everything to stage 2 and then everything to stage 3, because it's a bit like the 3-legged stool. If one of the legs is too short, it's not going to be very comfortable, which means it's not going to work for you. So get good quality content on your product page, good images. If you're busy selling on Amazon, you know what that looks like. So you've got to get that similar level of information onto your own site. Make sure you've got clear delivery speeds and processes and pricing. Returns policy is really clear as well. Customer contact details so people can follow up, because that kind of stuff, it gives people confidence in your brand that you know what you're doing. A homepage which sells your brand, sells your product. Don't turn it into your About Us page because it needs to be your selling page, but there should be a little bit of story in there too, but probably not above the fold, so not on that first screen that people are seeing. Once you've got those basics in place, you need to start working on the marketing of it. So the first thing to do is to make sure you've got email capture on the site. Because when you start driving marketing traffic, you're going to get some of it wrong. And you're not going to get it as good as it could be. So what you want is people able to sign up to your emails as well as buy, because it's an awful lot easier to get someone to sign up to your email list than it is to get them to give you cold, hard cash in return for something they're not going to have in their hands for a couple of days. So not only will it enable you to get email addresses of people who you can then turn into buyers, but it also gives you some feedback on what's working in your marketing, because you can track where the person who signed up came from in your marketing. So I guess actually talking stage 1, you need to have Google Analytics in place. You need to have your Facebook pixel in place. You need to have your Google AdWords pixel in place, so as you're actually able to do the tracking. Then we go off-site and we start driving traffic in. Now there's essentially 2 types of e-commerce marketing. One is organic, theoretically free, but not free at all, which is all about getting links, getting organic social, organic SEO, all that side of things. Free, not free at all. Takes a lot of time, effort, expertise in learning what to do and in actually doing it. And in both those cases, the organic social and the SEO, you can put as many hours in as you like, but it's still going to take weeks and months to get to a point where you actually see an impact from it. Then we have the paid side. So I strongly advise you to start doing paid things at the beginning, because until you've got traffic that buys coming into your website, you can't see what's working on your website. And you may well find that the products that sell well on Amazon are not the same products that sell well from your site, but you're not going to know that until you've got people coming in who actually want to buy. And the fastest way to get that knowledge is to pay for traffic from Google, Google Ads, Google Shopping campaigns, pay for traffic from Facebook. Then that will help you work out where to focus your effort on the SEO, on the organic social, in terms of which areas of the site. If you sell, let's go back to my example of biros and strange staplers, and you thought everyone was going to buy biros and you find out everyone's actually buying strange staplers, then your SEO strategy and your organic social strategy is going to be 80% strange looking staplers and 20% biros. But you're not going to know that until people actually start buying, because often what sells on Amazon is not the same as what sells on your website because of all the weirdness of the internet. Or it could be because traffic for staplers you can't buy at a rate that gives you enough profit, whereas traffic for buy rows you can, or vice versa. So all these things come into it, but to do that, you've got to get some traffic fast. So you get the website to that stage 1 level, you start paying to get some traffic in, optimize endlessly for the rest of your days, and it will all start coming together. I think hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And you made a really good point early on in that answer about how your rent or like your real estate should be allocated to the marketing budget. And so one follow-up question I have for you, say someone they say, all right, I'm going to allocate $500 a month. How would you allocate that budget across, paid ads, organic? How would you best spend those dollars?
Initially, I would get the SEO and content on-site basics covered. So keywords in the right place, good product copy. If there's any really obvious buying guidey blogs we should have, like why this stapler is better than any other, why using actual staplers is killing the planet. I don't know. Those content pieces need to be in place, the About Us page. That might take a bit of your budget in the first couple of months if you're having to outsource creating some of that content. After that, put it all into ads, basically, because you're slowly, as people get to know you and stuff starts to happen, you are going to start getting some links coming back, some awareness coming back on the website. It's going to happen anyway. I should caveat this with saying I am a direct marketer. So I love performance marketing and all the rest of it. I know it's where I could get my bang for my buck. I know it's where I could get that optimization happening and I could see results quite quickly. If you hate spreadsheets and numbers, then you should go and start doing it on building partnerships instead. So that's the alternative, is to go, be it influencer strategies, be it finding other brands who target the similar customer to you and doing swaps with them. Maybe you print some postcards and put it in their parcels and vice versa. So play to your strengths as well. So for me, it would be all about going after the ad spend. But if you're not wanting to be in Facebook ads every single day and Google ads every single day, then invest it in partnerships, because those are the areas we're seeing the best results for people, and they will all give you very quick feedback to enable you to grow the business. And by feedback, I mean sales.
Very nice. One last follow-up question before I kick it over to Ken. On that paid traffic, as we sit here in Q4 2021, there's been a lot of changes in terms of how you track your customers. If you have that $500 budget and you're going to pick Facebook or Google or a third, party platform, where would you say is the best place to start?
It depends on your product. Frustrating, but true. Okay. If your product is something people are actively looking for on search engines, so they're Googling, I need a new stapler, or I want a stapler that doesn't use staples, then Google is going to be an obvious place to go. If it's a product which needs a bit more explanation and you've got to sell people the dream, if you imagine you're in a marketplace, a real world market, little stands like a farmer's market, but for whatever your product category is. And if people come to you and go, yes, I'd like a dozen eggs, then go with the Google ads side of things. If people come to you and go, what do you do? Oh, that's interesting. What is it? How do I cook it? What do I do with it? That's the point at which a more interruption-based marketing method is going to work for you. So something like Facebook ads, Instagram ads, or TikTok ads, one where you find, your customers are, and you can provide that greater content piece. So it depends on your type of business and the type of products you're selling.
Awesome. So Chloë, a follow-up question that I've got is, and I really like your description of like building the site out in stages. So let's say we're done with stage 2, we've got all the SEO, we've got everything kind of worked out, and we're going to start sending paid traffic. You alluded to it a little bit earlier on, I think you called it cookie apocalypse. Can we dive into that a little bit more? Like what is Facebook and Apple and Google, and what are they duking it out, and what's the outcome for us?
Okay, so I'm going to frame this up for the smaller guy. Okay, the person who's not spending tens of thousands of dollars a month on these platforms. Okay, because they're approaching this and should be approaching this in a very different way to the rest of us who are paying hundreds or thousands a month on these platforms. Okay, So what's going on is that the big tech behemoths have decided to start being good to consumers by protecting consumers' data. Basically, you can get very cynical about that on various angles if you choose to. I'm not going to, but that's essentially what's happened. Is they've all gone, whoa, GDPR is happening, the California data stuff's happening, consumers want more control. Let's give them control at the point where they're doing things so they can blanket stop people from getting data. And essentially they've given consumers the option of having these restrictions in place or not having these restrictions in place, but they've set them as essentially the default. So, if you're doing an update on your iPhone, do you check all the little boxes or just go update, I'm bored, I want to get back on TikTok, stop making me update Apple. So it's something hideous, like 96% of people have accepted all of these things, which are supposedly the cookie apocalypse for us marketers. That's what's led to problems with the Facebook algorithm and its ability to operate, because it's not getting as much data back on people, and that's how it was able to do this. This has coincided with Facebook changing how it attributes sales back to you, so that you'll be seeing in your dashboard less sales coming in according to Facebook than there probably were. I think Facebook's response to this is, well, the sales are still happening, we're just not telling you about it, which doesn't help us optimize our activity. I was on a panel with four agencies who are spending millions of pounds a month on Facebook. And from them, what I could get as the biggest shift is that this year, they and all their staff will not be sitting at the Thanksgiving dinner table with their laptop open, making the micro tweaks that make huge impact for their clients. So I guess the good news for all of us out of this is, there's no point in over-optimizing your Facebook anymore. You've got to be a bit more relaxed about it, and you've got to let the algorithm do it, because a lot of the data, whilst Facebook isn't getting as much data back anymore, there's also data they can no longer give us. So the algorithm continues to be your friend. So I wouldn't, and then Google's getting in on the game as well. So they're about to start restricting stuff for all Google users too. What this means for the smaller business, those spending less than 10,000 a month on Facebook, is don't panic. That's the first thing to say. Do not panic about all of this. Strangely enough, the ad platforms are desperately trying to fix the problem and find ways to make it still work for you, because Facebook and Google both get 99% of their income from advertising. They are heavily incentivized to find a way to make this work for you. So please don't go down the rabbit hole of non-IP based cookie non-tracky weirdo technical stuff. It's not worth your time or effort. Try and create great quality ads and target those as best you can. Essentially what this all means is we have to be better marketers. We can't rely on Facebook to make it easy for us, basically. But it's not a reason to turn off your ads. Make sure you're tracking it via your Google Analytics as well, because that will give you a little bit more data, and create great quality ads and focusing on the audiences that you know really work for you. We're seeing a lot of people take some of their budget away from the ad platforms and put it into things like partnerships, like I mentioned earlier, because that's a way of getting in front of the right customers in a semi-paid manner, which works for people. I hope that gave enough of an answer, Ken.
Yeah, I really like that answer. And a couple of things that I'll point out to the listeners is, like, Chloe, you mentioned, like, don't panic. I really like that. People always like to freak out. The sky's falling in. Don't panic is great. And I really like, taking kind of like as a backup plan, or kind of leveraging the influencer marketing, maybe take a portion of that budget and try that. And then also focus on improving creative and ads. All excellent answers. I really like that. David, over to you. Or Chloe, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, one thing to add on the don't panic front is, what you have to remember is that all the marketing agencies out there are desperate to get you to hire them because of the cookie apocalypse, which is perfect. That's what they're in business to do. I've done it myself back when other things have happened, when I ran a marketing agency. But it means there's an excessively large amount of content about this problem being created, which leads us to end up panicking. And that's why I like to say don't panic, is because I like to kind of balance out the industry, balance out my peers who they're doing it for all the right reasons, but don't panic.
All right, Chloë, let's pivot a little bit and talk about you exiting your agency and creating a podcast and education business.
Yeah. So as I said, I ended up realizing I shouldn't be running a marketing agency. I discovered through various means I was an introvert, which I had never really realized, but which made so much sense, as often when we discover these things about ourselves, they do. And I was at the position running the agency where I think it was about 4 or 5 staff. So all who reported into me. Error number 1. I was in charge of sales, as you end up being when you're the owner of the agency. So that was another group of people essentially reporting into me. I was the number 1 lead for all our client accounts. Error number 2. And had no need to be, quite frankly. I had brilliant people working for me. So I was just exhausted. And every day at the end of work, I would go home and sit on the sofa, and I would spend the weekends sitting on the sofa because I had no energy left to do anything else. So I knew I had to get out of the agency model, because whilst you can get yourself out of a little bit of that, endemic in the agency model is constantly dealing with people, which is highly chaotic, and therefore just kind of destroyed me. So had to try and get out, but I had lovely people working for me, and I had lovely clients, and I didn't want to just shut the doors and go closed, done, dusted. I needed to find a better way out, which many people would tell me in retrospect was an awful decision, but for me it felt like the right call. Because an agency, quitting a job is really easy, and being an entrepreneur, a business owner, gives you a lot of freedom. But if you want to exit, it's incredibly hard. So I spent 5 years building eCommerce MasterPlan, and at the same time trying to find a way to exit the business, which I eventually did when one of my team became good enough and interested enough to take the business over. So essentially a management buyout, I suppose. But during that time, I started eCommerce MasterPlan because I realized that what I wanted to do was to help business owners plot their route to growth by helping them solve their marketing problems, which when you're sat across the table from a retailer and you're going, well, Google Ads is just the most obvious thing to do to grow your business. Here's my fee for managing it for you. There's a bit of a conflict. So I wasn't helping as many people as I wanted to. So initially, the very first thing I did in the new business was to write the book eCommerce MasterPlan, which is all about the basic steps towards building an e-commerce business, to try and give people that basic background, which back in 2007 when I wrote it was essential, but I still get people now going, that book's brilliant. I'm like, I wrote it in 2007, but it's still, there's a few bits which are out of date, but it's basically relevant. And then that evolved into a couple of other books. But the original idea was to turn it into kind of a big info marketer piece, to be the British version of digital marketer. Clearly I failed on that front. But yeah, it was book into day course, into 3-week course, into be my coaching client for life. But strangely enough, that turned out to be great for an introvert either. So I was doing a speaking tour for the UK government around the southwest of the country, talking about e-commerce. One of the other speakers was talking about podcasting. So I grabbed him one lunchtime and went, right, Matt, you're going to tell me about this podcasting thing. And that was in about 2014. And he talked to me about it. And I was like, oh, that sounds like a lot of fun. And also at the time, I was having some amazing conversations with retailers, but they were all off the record. So you'd speak to retailer A and they'd be like, oh, we've been doing this and it's really cool. And I go, oh, that's really cool. How interesting. Then I'd catch up with retailer B and go, oh, I know someone who's had the same problem as you and I know how they fixed it, but I can't tell you who they are or exactly what they did because it was all off the record. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if I could put these conversations in the public domain? And then Matt told me about this amazing thing called podcasting. I got a bit obsessed with Entrepreneur on Fire for about 6 months. Then went, yes, I'm doing this. I'm going to be the next John Lee Dumas. I've also failed to do that, probably for good reason as well. But it all led over the last 6 years to what I'm now very, very privileged to do, which is basically just talk and write for a living, and help far, far, far more people. So yeah, that's kind of like the story in a fairly shortened form.
Sure. Yeah. That's an amazing, amazing story. So on the podcasting side, for the listeners out there that might have their own podcast, and me asking for a friend, what suggestions would you provide in terms of, succeeding in traffic, monetization, and putting out a quality podcast?
I think traffic, as frustrating as this is to hear, and I hate it every time I hear someone say it, but getting listeners to your podcast relies on the quality of your content. Whether it's a scripted solo show, whether it's a whole load of people around a microphone show, whether it's an interview show, it's all about the quality of the content, getting good guests and getting them to tell you good stuff. And then it's how you bring the best to the fore. So people, when they first, they listen to the first 30 seconds, decide they want to listen to more. They look, they're scrolling through their podcast list. They're trying to work out, do I want to listen to this or not? And they've got Joe Rogan's podcast, and they've got your podcast, and they've got someone else in the same field as you. What do they fancy doing today? Who's piquing their interest? So I have, and then I think we've been playing around with advertising the podcast. And so far, Facebook traffic is considerably better than Google Ads traffic. So we ran ads for about 6 weeks, and I'm now tracking to see what impact that has on long-term listenership before we invest anymore. But the Facebook ads traffic, a considerably higher percentage of those who reached our landing page hit play on our trailer compared to the Google traffic, which is weird because Google people were looking for something and Facebook were distracted. And I would have bet a lot of money on that being the other way around. So yeah, I'm forever testing different things. I'm hearing good things about TikTok and Instagram. I'm not very good at either of those, so we don't do hugely well on them. LinkedIn works quite well for us, but it is heavily about getting the content quality right in the first place. Otherwise, you get someone who might listen to half an episode, but they'll never come back again. So you've got to get that retention piece. You also said about monetization. This is something I've been lucky enough to do quite well at, thankfully, which is why I get to just speak and write these days. And I think the first thing I would say about monetization is being in a niche or a niche makes it a lot easier in terms of price per 1,000 listeners. If you're in the niche of e-commerce like I am, your listener numbers are going to be considerably lower than someone doing a yoga podcast, okay? Because less people want to listen to it, quite frankly. But your cost per million, so your earnings per 1,000 listens, is going to be considerably higher. So, the yoga guys are probably going to be charging industry standard, which I can't remember what industry standard is because I don't charge it. So please don't ask me. But you're probably going to be charging 10, 20 times that if you are doing a niche podcast. And that niche podcast needs to be in a sector where there is someone who wants to pay money to get in front of your audience. So in the e-commerce space, we are surrounded by SaaS platforms who are desperate for leads. So, I get a lot of people wanting to advertise on my podcast far more than we can fit, because if I fit them all in, I wouldn't have any listeners left, quite frankly. So it's and then if you want to really, really monetize, first you've got to get your audience to be interesting to you. Then you've got to get your numbers up so it's big enough to make it worthwhile for someone to advertise. And then the next stage is to start bundling things together. So adding in email sends, adding in website activity, adding in social media, or as I'm doing with one of my sponsors at the moment, they're advertising on the podcast a webinar that I will be the compere of, the host of, for their prospects in a few weeks' time. And we've also put some of their clients in as guests during the podcast period that they're sponsoring. So you can do all these things to kind of create packages. So don't be scared of podcast advertising. Think of it like how you would sell anything, really, and be as creative as you like.
That's awesome. Yeah, thanks. That's a treasure chest of nuggets there. I took a bunch of notes, so I'll let my friend know. So Chloe and David, anything else do we want to cover before we go into the fire round?
Nothing on my end. This has been great.
All right. Chloe, are you ready for the fire round?
I'm ready.
What is your favorite book?
Quiet by Susan Cain.
Can you tell us a little bit about that book?
Yeah, sure. So it was instrumental in me helping work out how to be a better introvert. So it's an amazing book about what it means to be an introvert, which is, it's not diagnosable, I don't think, at the moment. It certainly wasn't when I read the book. But it tells you stories of other introverts and how they've coped. And if you are an introvert, you will read it going, oh my God, that makes so much sense. Oh, I do that too. Right. And it gives you the structure to understand. And I think as extroverts I know who've read it have found it very, very useful to understand the introverts in their lives.
Interesting. I'm going to check that one out. What are your hobbies?
Very boring. So I am a bit of a crafter. I found one of the ways I survived being in the agency was to create a latch hook rug of the evening. I found that spending my life in the virtual world, I needed to do something physical with my hands. Nowadays, I do a lot of crochet and I do a fair amount of cross stitch as well. So that gives me my creative physical outlet when I'm spending the rest of my time, even in this lovely virtual world.
Nice. I like balance. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What is one thing that you do not miss about working for the man or the woman?
The boss.
The boss, right.
I had, I said it very way back at the beginning that Barclays was the first place I had to escape from because it was a big organization and you're such a small cog and it was awful. I had one particular boss there who I will never forget, who in one official review process looked at me and said, Chloe, I think the reason I can't manage you is because your dad's a farmer and your mum's a teacher. Now, I was so destroyed from working in the company at that point that I didn't go, HR, right. Which I now would. But that kind of bosses who don't get you and who don't enable you to be as much as you could be is just one of the most oppressing things in the world. And that's something which I'm very glad I don't have to have someone above me like that anymore.
Nice. That's awesome. Last one. What do you think sets apart successful e-commerce entrepreneurs from those who give up, fail, or never get started?
I think there's so many ways to be a successful e-commerce entrepreneur. As I've spoken about, you can play to your strengths. I guess the ones who succeed are those who recognize they've got to get a number of things right. They've got to find a product that people want to buy, and that the people who want to buy that product are available in a way that you can target them so as you actually make money on every order, and that there's enough of them that you can grow a business that it's worthwhile doing. So I had a friend who had a tights business. She was selling a specialist kind of ladies hosiery, and she managed to do a great job of finding marketing sources that converted at a reasonable price, but there wasn't enough people out there who wanted the product for it to be worth growing it. And that wasn't her fault. You have to start the business to discover this. But often the people who fail are those who cling on to that idea for dear life and don't realize, actually, this is not the best thing I could be doing. So I think it's understanding it's not your fault if it doesn't work, I suppose, to summarize. Awesome.
Very cool. David, do you want to close out the show?
Yeah, absolutely. Chloe, how can people get a hold of you?
You'll find everything I'm up to at eCommerceMasterPlan.com. Both the podcast, the books, and anything else I happen to be doing is there. So eCommerceMasterPlan.com.
Excellent. And we'll post links to all of that in the show notes, but really want to appreciate you coming on the Firing the Man podcast and looking forward to staying in touch.
It's been a lot of fun. You asked some really good questions and I hope we've helped your audience a lot.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Chloe.